Hi, I'm Becky and I usually worship at St Philip's with my family, with my husband and my 2 young children. Today we're going to reflect a little bit on a passage that we probably know quite well. So I'm reading from Matthew 5 verses 13 to 16. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. When I started reflecting on this passage, I started to think about salt and all the different things that we use salt for. So we use it in cooking. We use it in cooking to give flavour, it gives a kick. It's one of those things that on MasterChef they either get into trouble for putting too much in or not enough in. So it's really important to give flavour. We use it in icy conditions when it's cold. We put grit on the floor to make it safe so we don't slip. In Jesus' time, salt would have been used as an important way of preserving, to keeping things fresh. So the fish that would have been used, would have been caught, would have been covered in salt to keep it fresh, to preserve it so it could be used at a later date. So this passage really would have spoken to the people at the time because they would have understood that method. Historically, salt is also very valuable. Soldiers used to be paid in salt. That's where the phrase "he's worth his salt" comes from. So salt was used as currency. It was very, very valuable. Salt's also very abundant in the sea. You can't stop the sea being salty. So there's an abundance of it. It's not going to run out. Salt is also not very good for us. Today's healthy guidelines tell us that we shouldn't have too much. There's a safe amount for us to be having each day, so too much is a bad thing. And I also found out that salt used to be used as a poison for cultivating fields. It would actually be used as a poison to get rid of all the weeds, to make the ground pure for planting again. So again, it was a way of getting rid of the badness so that new, fresh things could come through. I also remember my great aunt using the phrase "salt of the earth." She's the salt of the earth is that one. She used to say it about her carers that came in to look after her each day. She's the salt of the earth. And what great auntie May meant was that they were reliable, they were honest, they were doing good deeds, and they weren't selfish at all. It's the kind of person that I would want to be. It was interesting in the Bible as well. I realised that it wasn't an invitation to be salt or a light in the world. It said you are salt, you are a light in the world. So when we accept that calling of Jesus in our lives, this comes as part of the package deal. It's not an invitation. You are the salt of the earth. Those who accept Christ are the salt in the world. They have the power to stop sin spreading through the world, the power to preserve and keep things fresh for the kingdom of God. That's what happens when we accept Jesus' calling into our lives. We become part of the kingdom of God, and we've got that job of preserving it and making it known to other people. But it's not an easy life to lead, because salt can lose its saltiness. A Christian can lose the ability to stop the spread of sin. And in fact, through their own words and deeds and actions, can actually spoil the very thing that they're called to preserve. So our words and actions can stop the love of God being reflected by us, and in fact do the complete opposite. I returned to work this week, and I work in a school in a very deprived area of Leeds, and the children that we've got in are in because they are vulnerable, and so they need to be in school for their own safety and their own well-being. Not all members of staff have been in over the last 12 weeks, and there's only been a small handful, but that's led to a lot of resentment and frustration by people who have been called back into work whilst others are still at home. There are some that have been in during that time who are still in, so that they've had a lot of work to do. There was a lot of anxiety and stress, but I was determined to go in, and I was determined to be positive. I felt refreshed, I felt renewed, I felt that I'd had a lot of time to reflect over the last 10 weeks, and I was ready to go back and be with the children and do what I needed to do to make their lives easier and better. But as soon as I got into the building, I was surrounded by all this negativity and this resentment and this annoyance, and I found it really, really hard to be positive and enthusiastic. And I found that my words and my actions were not the beacon of light being reflected. In fact, actually, my words and my actions were more like the poison, the salt. And I felt really, really bad about that, because I got pulled into that frustration and that nastiness. And in no way did my words or my actions reflect God's love. And I felt really disappointed with myself that I hadn't been able to express myself and show that actually there was a better way of dealing with it. But all I can do is make a fresh start, find peace with last week and move on, and know that actually I can make a difference through my words and my actions, no matter how small it is. A tiny piece of salt in a meal can affect the whole taste of the meal. So my actions and my words in one small part can have an effect, and I need to remember that, and I need to remember that I'm valued and loved by God. I'd like to end with a prayer. I hope that you'd join me in that prayer. Father in heaven, thank you for calling me into your kingdom. Thank you for giving me a role to play in making your kingdom known to others. I am truly sorry for the times when I find that calling difficult, when I forget that my words and deeds are powerful. Please help me to use that power for good, to reflect your goodness. Help me to make my light shine before others, so that others can see you reflected in me. Amen.